Welcome to the newest episode of Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. I'm your host, Jason Fraley, picking the brains of the top filmmakers, musicians, and artists of our time. Lin-Manuel Miranda created two of the greatest Broadway musicals of the 21st century, In the Heights, which hits movie theaters today, and Hamilton, which won Best Musical 5 years ago. I spoke with Miranda at the National Archives Records of Achievement Award in 2016.
This is my first time here, and we just kind of got the extra goodies tour backstage, so we got to see a first copy of the Hamilton's Report of Public Credit. We saw a handwritten letter from Eliza to Congress at age 89, towards the end of her life. I'm here with a pang of regrets that there are so many treasures that I didn't see firsthand. One of the things that you realize when you write the show is every argument we're having now, everything we cover in Politico or in The Hill or your various news outlets, we had a version of that fight already. The fights that we have as a country, the debates we have between left and right, between progressive and liberal, there's been a version of it, and it's sort of like family fights. You know, the fight you have with your siblings, you've been having variations on that same fight for your entire lives. And so it actually kind of gives you a nice dose of perspective when you read the news and think the world's coming to an end. You go, oh, no, it's been this bad before. They are our fights. We're always going to argue about the size of role in our government, the size of government in our lives. We're always going to argue about how involved we are in the affairs of other countries. We are always going to be dealing with the repercussions of slavery and its legacy and how it affects who we are as a nation, always. It's part of the original fabric of our country. So, we're going to move this way and we're going to move this way, and the needle's going to move, but there are issues. You don't solve your family's issues, you just kind of keep talking them out.
Mr. Miranda, could you remind us, take it back to that original poetry jam you did at the White House. Yeah, what was going through your mind when you walk in front of that camera and you deliver that and you say, you guys laugh, but no one's laughing now?
Well, it was so funny, we got in a car to get here and the address was 700 Pennsylvania Avenue. I was like, oh, I've been next door. It was so funny to hear that address. I was terrified. I was as terrified as I've ever been. I was performing something I'd only previously performed in the shower and to my girlfriend and to maybe Tommy Kail and Alex Lacamoire. And so the thrill was, what happened that night is what has happened in real life, which is they laugh because it's a crazy idea, and then they get sucked into the story. Just like I got sucked into the story when I read Ron's biography, and he sucked me into Hamilton's life. That's the kind of power Hamilton's life holds. And so, you see it in miniature in that evening.
Director Thomas Kail also called into his hometown radio station to discuss the award.
If the 12-year-old version of me right now knew what would be happening, it would be a very strange time warp. So yes, long-time listener, as they say, long-time listener.
Could you say traffic and weather and Hamilton on the 8s?
I mean, not only would I say it, but I feel like I'll probably, start working there tomorrow if you guys would let me. So this is the thing that probably, this incredible honor that the Archives is bestowing on the three of us is a very big deal. And my mom is an archivist who works in Georgetown, so it's doubly big. I think the WTOP part of it might actually be one notch below. I mean, like right under the thing. So I appreciate you taking the time.
Oh, that's so awesome. As our listeners heard, you grew up in Alexandria. I want to get to the hometown hero stuff in a second because I just think it's so cool that you're coming home to get this. But first of all, talk about sort of, how big of an honor this is. I went and covered this a couple years ago when they honored Spielberg and Ken Burns and a couple people that year.
Oh gosh, let's keep Spielberg in like his own paragraph from Kail. I think that's just with all respect to me.
I'm trying to link your two directors, man. I'm giving you some cred.
Yeah, way too much. But thank you. All right, carry on with Spielberg's quote about me.
Yeah. Well, it wasn't specifically about you, but he was saying when he got honored, he said history is the most exciting thing we got. We live in two directions. One towards the future, and then also not enough in the past. And I just thought it's perfect that for such a play about, a founding father like this, it's almost like you're answering Spielberg's call there. But, just explain how big of an honor this is and to do it at the Archives and how that ties into, the fact that your show is bringing history to light.
I mean, it's an extraordinary honor. I can't overstate, what it means to be from where I'm from and part of the community of Northern Virginia and the DC area. I went to school from 7th through 12th grade in DC, and every day driving in, that very long drive from Alexandria, you go by these monuments, and and you become used to them. I grew up 15, 20 minutes from Mount Vernon. Went to soccer camp at University of Virginia. So these people, Thomas Jefferson, James Madison, George Washington, Lincoln, they're places you drive by as a child, and then all of a sudden you become an adult and you start to really understand the significance of what it means to make a monument, to pay honor to something. And in a way, what we are trying to do with our show is honor the musical theater that inspired us, to have a chance to talk about this country, to investigate this country, to explore the promise of this country. And as the son of an archivist and as a very mediocre American history student who has now made his thesis advisor proud, finally, I've spent so much time, wandering around, stacks and being in libraries and being around books and trying to make history feel relevant. And because it always felt like that to me. And I've always been fascinated by the idea of historiography and who tells the story. And Lin, in his way, arrived at a place where we met, and this became, one of the central tenets of our show. So, Ron Chernow's book, which was such an incredible inspiration for us, and our interest in having fidelity to the story and authenticity, so that people that cared about history like we did would know that we were honoring it, has been such a lovely surprise for us to see people embrace the show, and to be at the archives. To be recognized by an institution as essential as that is, it's incredibly humbling, and we're all so proud to be able to be there together.
I love what you're saying about how you grew up driving by all the monuments, and you almost take it for granted. Because I grew up in Frederick, and it's Francis Scott Key is buried in Frederick, and
That's right.
It's like we're surrounded by all this. So it's just wild how that can percolate and grow. The seeds were planted at a young age, I guess, for that.
Absolutely. And then when you move to New York City, and Lin is writing a show about Washington Heights, and we're doing the show at the Public Theater initially on Lafayette Street. It's everywhere. And New York City is another one of those cities where you walk 4 blocks, and if you really pay attention, you see that there's a little placard that says, what happened here, what happened here, what happened here. And we're standing on the same soil. It's the same building. It's the same artifice, the same foundation that we're all built from. And I think that's what this show is trying to connect to. This ability for us to see that it can belong to all of us and not just some of us.
And almost stop and open your eyes, because it's all around you. If you have so many people just have tunnel vision, but the history is all around us.
That's right.
That's awesome. Take me into your childhood in Alexandria. Did you have sort of a creative household? Did you put on plays in the living room for the parents? Or how was it at a young age?
Well, I'm sure I was incredibly aggravating and annoying when growing up. I'm in the middle of 2 sisters, which is one of the most defining things about me. So having 2 sisters was indicative of these things. One, I could only watch the movie Grease. It was the only thing I was allowed to watch. And 2, I grew up in a family where I was playing sports mostly, and was obsessed with like listening to like Skins games, or and
Sure.
I wanted to be a sports broadcaster, and John Miller, and that was really what I wanted to do. So what I did more often than anything was I would have like a tape recorder, and I would record myself. And there are some tapes out there that hopefully have been destroyed, of some early broadcasts of mine that should not see the light of day. But I didn't really start doing theater until college. I went to Sidwell Friends, and I had a teacher there named John Elko, who really altered the course of my life. He asked me to take an acting class. It was the only acting class I've ever taken in my life. And it was not something that I ever thought of doing or necessarily pursuing, but it really opened up my eyes to a possible landscape to explore. I didn't even think of a life in the arts as something that one could do. And it's not that I wasn't exposed to them. We'd go to the National, we'd go to the Kennedy Center, see something at Arena Stage. Those things were around, but it didn't occur to me that on the title page, when it said directed by, that was a job you could have. It felt like it was. So it was a childhood and growing up, right near the Masonic Temple, the GW Masonic Temple, where I learned how to both drive and sled, was in my backyard. And so I was, I think very informed by the sense of place, because Alexandria and Old Town had such rich history, and Virginia was a state that had so much pride, and was talking about history in a way that didn't make it feel distant, because between the Williamsburgs and the Old Towns, it felt like it was around, and in Mount Vernon, of course, and activated in some way. And so that was probably something that I implicitly was absorbing as opposed to seeking out.
Absolutely. But before we move on to sort of your college years, where I know your whole life changed, you mentioned John Miller. Does that mean you're an O's fan and an Skins fan?
I mean,
that's all we had back in the day, right?
The answer is yes.
Awesome.
Yes.
No, that's the right answer. That's because I.
Oh no. I mean, look. I mean, it was. I can really go deep on the 1991 Orioles if we would like to.
Yes.
So I mean, the '89 Why Not Orioles really changed everything for me, of course, because I was a little bit young. But like the '87, that '87 football season, the '91 football season, that bandwagon year, reading Tony Kornheiser and writing about that team, and Doug Williams and Mark Rippon, like huge parts of my life. And then what happened is both those teams started to break my heart in college, and I became slightly. I realized I had to remove some level of advocacy. Otherwise, I was not going to be able to get through the day. So now I can appreciate sports in a very different way. But I root for the Nationals and support them and the Orioles, and I like seeing any of those teams succeed. I was a big Washington Bullets fan as well.
That's just great. You had your little microphone as a kid trying to be Frank Herzog and John Miller. Herzog actually worked here at TOP a little bit after he left the broadcast for the Skins. It's crazy. Touchdown, cool. Tom McHale. All right, so moving to college, you went to Wesleyan in Connecticut.
Yes.
And that's where you met Lin-Manuel Miranda.
I actually only heard of Lin. I didn't meet him until I graduated. Lin was a freshman when I was a senior. And as I like to say, I was not talking to freshmen. So Lin was this precocious freshman who I'd heard about. And then when I graduated the next year, so I graduated in 99, in 2000, Lin wrote a very proto version of In the Heights. So an 80-minute one act. And a couple of my friends, John Mailer and Neil Stewart, saw that. And they called me and they said, hey, that kid Lin wrote this show. It's really good. When we start our theater company in a couple years, we should find him and produce it. And so they sent it to me in 2000. In 2002, he graduated. I went and met him with those guys in May of 2002. And I actually just got off the phone with Lin right before I was talking to you. So I kind of think of it as like the beginning of a 14-year conversation. We just never stopped talking. It just has been the two of us yakking at each other for 14 years.
So you were like, sorry, Lin, I got TOP on the other line. I got to go.
Basically. And obviously he understood.
That's so fantastic. So how did you describe that first meeting when you met him? Take me into that a little bit. What'd you think of him?
The first time I thought, well, they say the kid's pretty good. We'll see what he's got. The first time I met Lin was right after his show, and we had a very brief conversation up at Wesleyan. And then when he came to the Drama Bookshop, which is where my theater company was in residence, we had a little black box theater down there, about 50 seats. And Lin came and sat down there, and we just started talking. And I just saw instinctively that his motor revved really high. And he was so able to absorb ideas. This is something that he had written 2 years prior, and I'd been thinking about for 2 straight years. Mm-hmm. And he had not been thinking about that much at all. And I started asking questions or, addressing one thing or this thing or that thing. What if this happened? What if this happened? And he was just exactly on my frequency, mm-hmm. and I just... And it's, I was 25 years old, he was 22, but I was very clear that some sort of spark was happening between us that was both shared. And the first time we met, it was a 6-hour meeting. It was a meeting that went into a meal where I picked up the check, thank you, Lin, and then continued afterwards. So it honestly was a 6-hour conversation. And I just thought, oh, he understands that we want the same things. I want to try to realize his vision. I want to try to make the thing that inspired him a reality, and that was my job. And it was that immediate, though. I mean, it was really it was a remarkable connection and very, very deeply felt initially.
That's so great. When did so we covered your first meeting, and your other stuff on Broadway with him, but when did he first tell you about, hey, I read this Alexander Hamilton biography and I think it would be an awesome musical? Oddly, because of Gmail, I know the date. It was August 1st, 2009. Wow.
So a little more than 7 years ago, he sent me a GChat, that said, "Hey, I'm reading this biography," and I just sort of said, "Great, what else you do?" Like, I mean, it didn't even register on me.
Right.
He grabbed a book, and then when he got back from that later in August of 2009. He told me about how this book really sparked for him, and that he wanted to meet the writer, and that he had an idea to write a song, not a musical, but maybe a collection of songs. So really the end of 2009 was when I first started hearing about it, and we started talking about it. But it took him months and months to write that first song, which is the one that's on YouTube that he performed at the White House. And then after that, he performed it and no one saw it. And then through this sort of strange circumstance, they had recorded it and they put it out on YouTube. And then the world had this song. And that was an insight into what it felt like in the room. He had described it to me and he had played the song for me. But I sort of saw this electricity shoot off stage and electrify that audience. And then I just tried to encourage him to keep going. And so that's really how it all started, was, that one song 7 years ago.
As you had him keep going and, writing and rewriting and tinkering, what sort of like changes did you make along the way? Was there an earlier version of Hamilton, an earlier draft that was drastically different?
Well, we kind of built it together brick by brick, whereas In the Heights was something that existed in a form. There was an 80-minute version, and then our collaborator Kiara Hudes, who's had a lot of her work produced down in the DC area, came on board, but there was a 120-page script. So that was sort of like taking something that he had birthed and then going back and reimagining and, getting under the hood together. This one was something that, really from that first song existed as one brick in the wall. And then he wrote another song, which became the song My Shot. And that was another brick. And then we had these two things and we just started building together. So the conversations were about, it's funny, Lynn's calling on the other line. I'm so tempted to merge him right now. But
do it.
I can't do it.
Come on.
I can't do it. That would really be like, hey, you're live on, guess what?
That would be hilarious.
Breaking news, Lin-Manuel calls Tommy Kail. But, one of the early things we did to really connect us to Ron is I needed to read the book. And I said to Lynn, let me read the book, and let's not talk about what we want the show to be until we've both read it clean. So Lynn obviously had spent a lot of time with the book, and I was just coming to it. And I said, I want us to go through the book and on our own write down what we think could be a good song, what's a character that sparks, what's an idea or a moment or a scene, and let's see where our lists overlap. Let's see where those Venn diagrams overlap. And we both had these initial lists, sort of unsullied by the other's ideas, and we kind of could compare them. And that was really, one of the important springboards for those early conversations when it was just the two of us talking about it. And we had so many things that we shared that we thought should be told. So how do we explore this dynamic between George Washington and Hamilton? Well, Lynn wrote the song Helpless, which is for Eliza Schuyler. Mm-hmm. And then there was one line that Angelica has in it, and we both knew, well, Angelica has to be a part of this. We can form this incredible bond between these two sisters and this complicated triangle. And then Satisfied came out of that. So it was all just from talking and testing and trying things out. And then, Alex Lacamoire, our incredible music director and orchestrator, started to join the conversations. And we just worked towards this first concert in 2012. And we thought, let's just do 10 or 12 songs. Let's just see what we got. Let's not be encumbered by narrative. Let's just write and move towards whatever, Lynn has moved to write towards, and see what happens. And we did that concert in January of 2012. And that was really the first time that any of the music had existed in an orchestrated way in any sort of public fashion. And about 400 people saw it that night. And it was a great confidence builder that maybe there was something there for us to continue to explore.
And you mentioned the two sisters just then. Were any of your own two sisters in there? Did you latch on?
Well, I will say this. Lynn has a very important older sister to him. Alex Lacamoire has the same. And one of the things that I think we were all interested in, implicitly and explicitly, was showing the bond and love between two sisters. And that's really the great love story of our show.
Right.
And people that question whether that's something that can be consumed by the masses, I'm just going to point to Frozen and Wicked.
I was going to say Frozen, man.
Those are two really dynamic shows about sisterhood and about sisters loving each other. And that was something that I think was at the core of the conversations that I had with our Broadway company, with Renee and Pippa and Jasmine, who played those three sisters. So that to me is in some way the heartbeat of the show. And so that's absolutely informed by that relationship that I had and the affection that my sisters had for each other.
I want to know sort of that spark you saw in each of these people, like when you're in the casting room. Like Leslie Odom Jr., first time, or you're like, boom, Aaron Burr.
Well, Leslie actually saw one of our early workshops up in 2013, and he was someone that I knew a little bit. Lynn knew him better than I did, and Lynn said, hey, I think it's really worth us reaching out to Leslie to come in and jam with us a little bit. And from the second he walked in the room, it just felt like, oh, there's Aaron Burr. Like, he had a confidence, he had a skill level, he had a complexity that felt like it was really well suited to the role. And, his energy is so distinct and different from Hamilton's, not from Lynn's, but from Hamilton's. And that felt important. So that was a really happy moment. And then I met them all in different ways. Christopher Jackson, who plays George Washington, Chris and I met in 2002 or 2003 when we were putting together In the Heights. And so Chris knew about this show in 2009 when Lynn said to him once off stage at Heights, hey, I've got our next show and I got a part for you. And then, about a week later when I saw Chris, I said, Mr. President. And I think he understood what was going on. Chris is someone that I'd known for a dozen years. Renee Goldsberry, I met through the audition process, and she walked in and she delivered Satisfied. And I thought, oh, she's smarter than Lynn. She's more skilled than Lynn. Let's put her in the world. And Lynn agreed. Philippa Sue, who played Eliza, was someone that I had seen in a show called Natasha Pierre in the Comet of 1812 at a little theater that I'd worked at a lot called Ars Nova. And, with about 70 other people, she was in this really exciting new musical. And I actually turned to a casting director and a manager that I knew there at intermission. And I said, so is it going to be you or me? Because that's the real thing. And my friend Rachel Chavkin directed that and had put her in this show, and they created this beautiful role for her. And so I'd mentioned that to Lynn. Lynn then went to go see her in the show. He thought she was terrific. So we invited her to come to these early workshops and jam with us. Daveed Diggs, who played Thomas Jefferson and Marquis de Lafayette, was someone that I had met through a very good friend of mine at Wesleyan, Anthony Viniziali, who had started Freestyle Love Supreme with me and Lynn, which is an improvisational hip-hop show. And Daveed was out on the West Coast in the Bay Area with Anthony, and Anthony introduced us to him, and we started getting to know him from this other project. And as Lynn and I were talking about the Lafayette Jefferson role, which was always going to be doubled, played by the same actor, and we thought, all right, who's a better rapper? Who's more charismatic? Who's better? Daveed. We should call him. So we called Daveed, and Daveed joined us. So it came from different places. Some people we met through more traditional casting. Some were people we knew. And we just kept our eyes wide open and tried to listen for that spark.
Was there ever any doubt that Lynn would play the lead? And once he was the lead, what was it like? He came to you with this idea. What's it like now? Now you're the one coaching his performance.
Well, it's funny. After we did In the Heights, where Lynn was the star of the show, one thing was really clear. Lynn and I were always interested in making shows that could exist beyond Lynn. Freestyle Love Supreme was a show everyone said, well, was it going to work without Lynn? And we were able to find really talented people to make that happen. Yeah. Within the Heights, it was the same thing. And with Hamilton, I said to Lynn after Heights, all right, so for the next one, will you please just sit next to me so we can solve this together? And then he performed that song at the White House, and I thought, okay, for the next one, can you? So I knew pretty early that he should originate the role of Hamilton. But Javier Munoz, who's now playing the role on Broadway, played the role once a week ever since we were down at the Public. And what that was doing was letting the world know that, hey, this is not just about Lynn. Lynn made something out of his spirit of generosity that is bigger than Lynn. It's bigger than it's not about one person. It's bigger than his talent or his ability to be a dynamic performer. It's about the role. And Javier gave Lynn as a writer a chance to watch the show, so Lynn could sit out there with me. And it also gave, I think, confidence to our entire production that we were making something that could be durable and sturdy. And and again, that's a testament to Lynn's spirit and to his willingness and desire to share this gift he has. Do you have a favorite musical number in the show? Oh, it depends on the night. I will say that I feel like Room Where It Happens, the work that Andy Blankenbuehler, our choreographer, did on that, Alex Lacamoire, our orchestrator, the way it's designed and lit is one that I think is really in some way a microcosm of the power of the show, because it's taking a song about a dinner where they talked about where the capital should be, and it becomes a dynamic, explosive production number in a musical. I mean, that just doesn't make sense. Except, as I said to the cast many times, with what Lynn gave us and what we're trying to make, it shouldn't exist except that it does. And that to me feels like a really shining example of that.
Awesome. Do you remember that moment? You've rehearsed this thing over and over again before the night before it opens on Broadway, or the day it opens on Broadway. Did you have sort of a sense inside yourself that this thing is going to be massive? I mean, obviously you're surprised at the extent it took off, but was there something in you that was like, this is way different than anything we've seen?
At that point, on Broadway, I knew that something was happening that was exceptional. The very first inkling, because by the time I got to Broadway, we'd done, and open on Broadway, we'd done 20 or 30 shows on Broadway, and the show had been around for about 6 or 7 months.
Right.
When we did our very first show at the Public Theater, which was on January 20th, which is Inauguration Day and also my birthday. So those are the two reasons I remember it.
Lots of tie-ins.
Lots of tie-ins. I remember there was an app that gives away a pair of tickets to shows. It's called Today Tix. Plug. And they were going to give away 2 tickets to the show, to our very first performance. So no one had seen it. There had been not a single person in the world who had seen it. And at the 290-seat theater, down at the Public, there were 2 seats that were going to be given away. And when I asked the people at the Public how many people had signed up for it, they said, well, usually it's about 500 or 750 people will sign up for these tickets. And I said, well, how many people signed up for these 2? And they said 12,000. And that was to me like the scene in the movie with the supernatural, like all of the animals are flying like out of the forest really quickly, and you're like, why are they running from the forest?
You broke the app.
Yeah. I mean, so there were just these moments where it's like, oh, the anticipation was very high. But down at the Public Theater, it was only 290 people at a time that could see it. There was nothing online. There was nothing written about it. Rebecca Mead wrote a really terrific piece for The New Yorker. And that was really the only press that we had out. We really were just trying to keep our heads down and do the work. So luckily, you're sort of protected by that, because the job is just kind of make it better the next day. And by the time you pick your head up, and the show is opening off Broadway, you're now starting to become aware of an energy building around it. But none of us ever expected that it would have the reach that it did, and we're incredibly grateful that people have received it in this way, and humbled by the reception.
I just want to know real quick about Tony Night. How crazy of a night was that to finally get up and and just watch one after another after another? I mean, you guys made Broadway history.
Well, the whole thing was such a celebration of the whole show, and for us, of the whole community. And I think that's what was really important, is that we never felt like that night was about us. We felt like it was a celebration of what it means to work in the theater, of what it means to be a part of this community. It was a night that was so much bigger than us. It was about a remarkable season on Broadway, and being part of this really vibrant and vital community that has persevered and evolved and stood strong for so long.
Awesome. Bring it back around to the archives. Final question. There's a sign outside the front of the archives that says past is prologue, and you guys are definitely bringing it back, just like the Spielberg quote we said earlier. How cool is it going to be to be there and have mom and pops there and just come home and accept this awesome honor? I'm proud of where I'm from. I made a show with incredibly talented people, and I'm a small part of that. Of that endeavor, but I do know it's a show that's about where you're from and trying to make home. And I always have felt that I'm so defined by where I'm from and by my family, and so to be back in my hometown among them, being right next to Lynn and Ron, 2 people that I care about, who have both worked so hard to try to make this, at a building that stands for so many things that connect us to the past, feels, it makes us feel very human-sized in an appropriate way, which is what a monument should do. It reminds you of scale, and so we're just happy to do our part.
I caught up with Cale and Miranda again when they received the 2018 Kennedy Center honors.
I remember we spoke with you guys a couple times before on WTOP. You said
my hometown.
Yeah, you said you drove past the monuments every morning going to Sidwell Friends and everything, and now history's alive. Share the story, both of you guys, of that initial. You said it was a G-chat, right? You said Lynn sent you a G-chat and said, I've just read this amazing book. Do you remember this?
Yeah, I sent a not sober G-chat from Mexico saying I'm watching Mad Men season 1 on DVD and reading this really great book on Alexander Hamilton. I think there's something here.
Yeah. And of course, I thought that Mad Men would change my life. And I think I just read the wrong line.
That's awesome. And also, you've sort of come full circle. You mentioned the president in the White House. It started with that poetry jam at the White House.
Yeah, it's funny. That moment was sort of a microcosm of our entire experience, right? I tell you the pitch for the musical, everyone laughs, like very cute, this is like a funny YouTube video, and then people get swept up in the story because it's an incredibly compelling life story, and by the end of the song they're like, wait, but what happened with that guy? and so that 4-minute experience, which was a once-in-a-lifetime experience, has sort of been the experience of this show.
Yeah, Alex, obviously, who was a big part of that moment, he was the one smiling very hard on the piano. I say to these guys, but like, what if they had really biffed that performance? If you guys hadn't nailed that, we're definitely not here.
We're definitely not here.
I also spoke with Leslie Odom Jr., who played Hamilton's nemesis, Aaron Burr.
Congratulations, sir. I appreciate you coming and talking the week of the Tonys.
Thank you so much.
Are you excited? What are you going to be doing sitting there thinking? I mean, you probably watched the Tonys growing up for years, and now you're up there.
I've never won a Tony, never been nominated. But I'm going to kind of treat it a little bit like the day I got married for my wedding day. It's a lot of planning, a lot of money, a lot of time and energy and thought that goes into that day. And then on the day, you really have to release and enjoy yourself and be present and let other people worry about where you're supposed to be and what time you're supposed to be there. So that's what I'm doing on the 12th. We're going to stress up until the 12th, but once that day gets here, I'm going to have a ball.
Yeah. What's it like knowing that you guys are up for a record number of awards? You're in a history-making show here.
Yeah, it feels amazing. It feels like this show that we all believed in is doing what we all believed it could, and it exceeds our expectations almost every night with every audience that we have.
And I think I saw a little fun tidbit when you were on Fallon. You said you don't dress up until right before the show.
That's right.
What's the deal with that?
Well, because it just gives you longer to think about not going out on stage. Because it's a scary thing. And so I'd rather actually pretend like we don't have anything to do that night. We're just here for a hang. And then at the last moment, somebody shoves me out on stage.
And in case some people missed your Tonight Show thing, recap the story when you finally left the stage and you were watching from the seats and you were with a famous person. Was it Art Garfunkel?
That's right. Yes.
Just recap that real quick.
It's dark in the theater, and so you're just around silhouettes. I was in the VIP section, so I knew that all these people were, somebodies. And there was a man down the row from me who was a little disruptive. He's talking to his wife. He's kind of singing along a little bit. It's very strange. And there's a woman in front of me who's getting very frustrated. She's turning around. Don't talk. Stop talking. It's not that hard. Just don't talk in the theater. And so I tapped my wife and I said, it's gonna get ugly at intermission. Yeah. She was really pissed. Yeah. And at intermission, the lights come up and the man is Art Garfunkel and the woman is Shonda Rhimes. And we have, I've since formed a really close friendship with Shonda, and she explained to me, you don't mess with people on their Hamilton tickets, because Shonda had flown her 3 best friends into town. They paid God knows how much for those tickets.
It took a lot to get there.
That's right. It's an experience that you want to give people. So no harm, no foul. But the house manager had to talk to Mr. Garfunkel and asked him to be a little more quiet during Act 2, and he was.
Tell me about Lin-Manuel Miranda's genius. We're playing off him every night. What does he give you as an actor?
Oh, please. Lin works with an improvisational spirit. And so even though we're not making up words every night, it feels wholly new. And it feels like we spin this yarn every single night. And that, all of the culture, all of our ethos in the Richard Rodgers Theater was given to us by Lin. He's the visionary, and so we lined up behind him 2.5 years ago when we started this process, and we continue to do it each night. He sets just the most beautiful tone in the space, and it's my favorite place.
Well, his name is on the playbill and in the title, but you'll go down in history as the damn fool that shot him, right?
Yeah.
How's the line go? It's something.
That's right.
Yeah.
You got it.
Could you say it?
I'm the damn fool who shot him. I think that's how it goes.
And finally, I spoke with the big screen cast of In the Heights, Corey Hawkins, Leslie Grace, and Melissa Barrera, about why it's bound to be the movie of the summer.
How you doing?
We're hanging in there. My wife and I absolutely loved this movie. I gotta say, it better be up for a Best Picture next year. I know we gotta watch.
Come on.
Go mouth to God's ears. Yeah, we'll see.
All right, so I want to know. I think I saw it at the Kennedy Center with Anthony Ramos when it came to town. But which of you saw it on Broadway? Which of you was the most obsessed with Lynn's, the OBC, the soundtrack, all that stuff?
Melissa.
I don't know. She says, I don't know.
No, I was
am a huge fan of the show. I saw it many, many times on Broadway with Lynn, with the original cast, with every other cast. I would audition for it every chance that I got. I never got a call back. Nothing. But now I'm here.
Now you're here.
It all paid off. So yeah, but I mean, obviously, obviously you can do things on screen that you can on stage. I mean, it was great on stage. Lin-Manuel's soundtrack was amazing, but on screen, when John Chu gets involved, like particularly I'm thinking of you two, Leslie and Corey, dancing on the side of the dang building. How is that actually even achieved? I know a magician doesn't give up its tricks, but come on, give us some cool filmmaking tidbits here.
Oh man,
We're magic.
Side on the dang building.
We're magic. That's what it is. We are magic.
Yeah.
No, we there's a lot of heart and soul and work and blood, sweat, and tears went into building it. It was the last shot of the actually shot of the shoot, right? Like it was
last number to shoot. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, last numbers that we shot, and there was a lot of technical camera ballet there too, because it's like we had our own choreography, but then the camera team and Alice, our incredible DP, we just had to work together and figure out how to do that. And Leslie and I, we struggled through.
Yeah, we leaned on each other for those, figuratively and literally, and on the rest of our choreo team. We left our parts of our body on that side of the building, for sure. But it was so worth it.
Also, just add that, like you said, like John Chu's sensibility. Yeah, on stage is one thing, but you can't do necessarily all of those things on stage. You can't bring Highbridge Park with the pool and everything to the stage and do that for 96,000. So the cinematic world sort of opens it up and cracks it open for us in a whole new way.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And what I loved about it too was not only do each of your characters get, a really touching love story, but you each have your own individual character arc too. So, for instance, Melissa, your character, Vanessa, she's working at this salon, but she has these big dreams of being a fashion designer. Like, talk about why it's cool that each character gets its own arc like that from beginning to end.
Well, I think this movie and what John Chu and what Lynn and Kiara did with the original show that John wanted to, expand upon is the idea that these people matter and their stories matter, and that he wanted to give each of them the moment and the validity to their dreams. It doesn't matter if the dreams are, to go away to college and build a pathway for dreamers to become citizens. It doesn't matter if your dream is to, continue the business of the dispatch and build it within your community, or if you want to go downtown and be a fashion designer. All of those dreams are important, because each personal experience, when you're living your life, for you, those are your highest stakes, like your dream is everything for you. So I think it's beautiful that you get to see all these people that grew up together, that know each other and love each other, each have their own dreams and their own experiences, and how they all lift each other up and help each other in their paths and in their journeys to achieve those dreams.
Absolutely. And all set against the backdrop too of, there's such, this movie is such a big win for representation on the screen. Everyone's going to go out and see so many different cultures at play here, but someone speak to that. I don't know who wants to take that, but this is going to be a truly diverse musical for a change.
Yes. For a change. Come on now. That's what we want. We need to see ourselves on screen. And I think Jimmy always said, we all been saying it, if you can see it, you can be it. And you don't realize how much you miss seeing people that look like you, or seeing people that look like someone that on screen until you do see it. And I definitely experienced that in reading Nina's sides, even when I was auditioning, and we all did, whether you fell in love with the story on stage or through, getting to know it firsthand experience, like me through making the film. We know these people, and their universal themes and their universal, there's things that hit everybody's heart and hit home. So to be able to see it through the scope of a predominantly Latino community is beautiful, because usually we're not allowed to dream this big. So so proud to be a part of it.
And we're honored to watch it. It's awesome. You know, it's been such a horribly depressing year with the pandemic and, you know, the election. Everything was like, it's heated. And God, the Black Lives Matter movement, like there's been so much heaviness. Talk about why this is the perfect film to kind of, as we're on the way out of this pandemic, hopefully, fingers crossed, you know, maybe get people dancing out of the theater again, or maybe dancing at home on HBO Max.
It's important. It's important because it has been a heavy year, and we all get to go back to the theaters. I mean, to be able to sit down, get your popcorn, maybe, you know, get your concessions, and just really just treat yourself. Like, we haven't been able to treat ourselves, you know what I mean, for this incredibly hard year. And just the perfect words for it. You know, John calls this film sort of a vaccine shot of hope or joy. And it really is. You get to move, tap your feet. You know, you might not have rhythm, but you're going to have rhythm by the time you leave the theater. I can promise you that.
Yep.
Like, it's that good. It's fun. And it's like the great summer. It'd be a great summer musical film in any year, but particularly after the challenging few years we've had, for us to all go to be together and just look at each other and see each other and experience together.
And remember to celebrate. Allow ourselves to celebrate even the smallest victories. You know, not everyone made it out of this pandemic. There's a lot of people that didn't make it out. But if you did, you survived, allow yourself to celebrate that. And I feel like this movie is a gigantic celebration. And so it's perfect for today.
Bound to be the movie of the summer. And I hope, like we said at the beginning, it goes on to the Oscars. It's going to be Sharks and Jets. It's going to be you versus West Side Story. I'm telling you, you're going to be duking it out for the best musical, but I think you might have it. So, all right. Thanks so much, everybody.
Thanks for all of us.
Yeah, right. Thank you.
Thanks so much for joining us on Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. Remember to hit the subscribe button and give us a 5-star rating if you like what you hear. We'll see you next time. I wanted to take a second to tell you about an app I really enjoy. Living in the DC area is great, and Podcast DC gathers all of the local shows that I like all in one local app. Health, sports, local news, politics, and so much more. Podcast DC is the new local app with hundreds of DC area podcasts to choose from. I can earn exciting rewards just for listening and share the podcasts I love instantly. Available in the App Store or in Google Play, listen local with Podcast DC.